In the Ruin DLC for Security Breach, you play as a girl named Cassie who has been called down by the voice of her friend Gregory. As you venture deeper into the Pizzaplex, you uncover answers about where you're heading. And in the end, you discover that it wasn't Gregory but a robot mimicking his voice. At the end of the game, you set the robot free, and the real Gregory has no choice but to leave you to die below as the robot is too dangerous to let out. One thing I forgot to mention is the seemingly second antagonist of the game, and that is the anomaly bunny known as the Entity. And I believe I have both solved the truth behind the mimic and the identity of the anomaly bunny. However, before we continue with the video, I would greatly appreciate if you would check down below to make sure that you are subscribed and hit the like button and hit the bell to get notified of my next uploads. It's the best way to support me and it's literally free. It takes like 2 seconds. Thank you very much and enjoy the video. And remember, all of this is simply just a theory. In this video, I want to discuss both the Mimic and the Entity in the Ruin DLC. I believe they're the two biggest questions surrounding this DLC, and overall where the story is heading. The best place to start is, where do we first learn about the Mimic? In the Tales from the Pizzaplex book, a character named Edwin creates the Mimic to act as a babysitter for his child while he worked. It was coded to mimic any human movement or actions. However, when a son is one day struck by a white van outside while chasing a ball, he falls into despair and destroys the Mimic creature. Later, Fazbear Entertainment employees were sent to collect the parts. However, when they show up, the Mimic did what it does best and recreated the pain that Edwin inflicted on it, brutally killing each employee. That's a very brief and quick summary of what happens in the story The Mimic in the 6 Tales from the Pizzaplex book. Another thing to note about Edwin is that after he destroys the Mimic, he runs away, and his property is then immediately taken by Fazbear Entertainment due to a breach of their contract. However, decades later, Edwin runs out of money and runs back to Fazbear Entertainment and demands to be placed on the board of directors as a way to honor their agreement to buy out his company. After this happens, the company decides to build a giant tree in the middle of the Pizzaplex and put a tiger head with 2 different colored eyes in the middle of it. It is built as a way to be a hub for all of the programming to the animatronics. When Edwin attempts to find out what program it's running, he gets in it and discovers that it's running his Mimic 1 program. He then spends 5 nights to collect papers and write strange symbols as well as the words "I'm sorry" and hangs them up all around the inside of the tree. The last time Edwin sneaks in, the head chairman of Fazbear Entertainment locks him in and he suffocates inside his own creation. Many theorists have been quick to point out that Edwin seems like a parallel to Henry, and honestly, I think that is wrong. Not only does the story The Monty Within make it clear that Freddy Fazbear's Pizzeria Simulator is a game inside the universe, meaning that saying Edwin is a parallel to Henry would be like me saying Markiplier is a parallel to Steve from Minecraft. It truly doesn't stick if the character you're supposed to be a parallel to exists in the same universe as you. They also have more differences than similarities. The only things that make them similar is that they're both a single father, their child tragically dies, they're an engineer, and they are somehow related to Fazbear Entertainment. By that logic, you could say Edwin is William. Those similarities aren't really concrete for Henry. Edwin only builds endoskeletons, not the characters themselves. Henry has been known to create the characters. Edwin also builds a robot to watch his kid. Henry builds one to replace his kid. Edwin's company was bought out by Fazbear Entertainment. He was not the co-owner like Henry was. And Edwin dies inside the Pizzaplex due to the Fazbear chairman trapping him inside of a tree in the middle of the Pizzaplex, while Henry dies in the books from technical suicide, and in the game lore, we don't really know. Now that Freddy Fazbear's Pizzeria Simulator was revealed to also be a game in the universe, who the hell knows anymore? At this point, it's very clear that, well, Edwin isn't a parallel to Henry, and he isn't a parallel to Afton either, since the differences don't match up with William either. Who could he be a parallel to? I don't hate the idea that Edwin could just be a standalone character. However, it feels like the Tales from the Pizzaplex books are really trying to make his character something. Who's one other character that we've been introduced to as being an engineer, but also being absent in the story? He's also known to have worked for Fazbear. I believe that Edwin is a parallel to Cassie's father. I'm aware that throwing out just Cassie's father is a pretty wild accusation, and there very well could have been any other character that created the Mimic in the games. However, we know that Edwin has to be a parallel since the Mimic is ripped straight from the books. Somebody had to have built him. So I tried to compare other characters just to see how they do. At first I thought about Vanessa because in my mind that was really the only person that was trying to help Afton. Obviously that was a dud, as she's not shown to be an engineer, considering that her character model is literally a stitched together suit instead of like a full built suit. Not only that, but she's not a parent that we know of. She doesn't look old enough to be a mother, and it shows no signs of her having a child, so that would be pretty crazy for them to just randomly introduce. Why would she build the Mimic? It's a widely accepted fan theory by this point that the Mimic virus was part of the circuit boards that Fazbear Entertainment sent over to the FNaF VR team to scan into the game, therefore creating Glitch Trap, Burn Trap, and so on. I'm sure this theory has been covered by countless theorists, and they're able to explain it a lot more in depth than I am, so I won't waste time attempting to go in depth on it. Anyway, back to my question, why would she build it? Vanessa wasn't in on the plan to help out the Mimic until she was infected by it after playing FNaF VR, meaning that she would have no reason to build it before playing said game, and it would have had to have been built before the game, obviously, since it was scanned into the game. Does that make sense? I hope so. Another person I thought about was Michael, and obviously that was a huge red X. He doesn't compare with Edwin whatsoever. We have no one, honestly, and I can see why people immediately drew the connection to Henry, as it's the easiest way to get a character to link. However, the differences are too big to be ignored in my opinion. And while I do think that there are flaws with Cassie's dad being an Edwin parallel, it definitely seems like it's one of the most easiest ways to go, especially considering we don't know too much about Cassie's dad, so we don't know how big the differences impact him. We know that Cassie's dad is a technician due to the Faz wrench that Cassie finds in Ruin. As she mentioned, it's just like the one that her dad had. Not only that, but when we pick up a Glamrock Bonnie plush, the info about it talks about her dad not telling her why they got rid of Bonnie, meaning her father had some insight on the inside of Fazbear Entertainment, considering he would know why certain characters are removed, just as Edwin was promoted from a technician to the board of directors. Notice it doesn't say he doesn't know what happened to Bonnie, it says he never told her. These are things that Edwin in the books would have knowledge of. It's also explained that her dad's favorite animatronic was always a bunny, something interesting that I want you to keep in mind for later. Now that we have that out of the way, we have the creator of the Mimic settled, meaning we can move on to the Mimic itself. I want to talk a little bit about the VANNI Mask that we constantly wear in this game. This is a concept that I agree heavily with TheChiptide on. Please go watch his video, it's linked in the description below. He explains his thoughts a lot more in depth than I'm able to on this subject. However, the main takeaway is that the VANNI Mask is connected to the Mimic AI network, and every time we wear it, it drags us farther into the Mimic program. As TheChiptide calls out in his video, it said that the mask implements an optical transponder into our brain. Some thought of the word transponder as receiving the information into your optic nerve, basically meaning that you see what the mask wants you to. The way TheChiptide interprets it is that the transponder is much more literal, referencing heavily to everyone's least favorite thing in the FNaF franchise, the sound illusion discs. Again, he goes much more in depth in his video, but I don't want to give away all of his video, so you can go watch it for yourself. In basic terms, the sound illusion disc placed in our brain causes Cassie to see glitchy objects in the real world, while the mask causes her to see actual reality. So it's somewhat flipped. You're starting to see objects that aren't there in the real world, but the mask is allowing you to see through them. This way, the Mimic is forcing her to need to wear the mask, making it much easier for it to absorb Cassie's mind. Now, who's the other character that is seemingly the second antagonist of this game? The Entity. It is an electronic appearing blue bunny with an Aladdin genie-like look to him, with his lower half getting smaller as it descends, almost as if he's appearing out of an object. Its texture is unlike ones we've seen before, with electricity connecting its arms to its hands and wires connecting the torso and the lower body. It also appears with blocky cutouts of its body, resembling glitching in a way. It's never explained who built the Mech's security protocol, however, in the end, it said that it was designed to keep the Mimic at bay, meaning whoever designed it knew just how dangerous the Mimic was. In fact, something very interesting that not many people notice in the game is the Entity actually never tries to kill you. It is always attempting to stop you from wearing the mask. It puts up the signal jammers to prevent you from wearing it. They show up if you have it on for too long, and in the end, when it appears after you shut it down, it reaches for you, almost as if it was trying to save you. It's something that I never fully put together, but the Entity isn't the villain, it's a hero of sorts. Something else to note is that the model in both the game and the trailer where it jump scares you, there are tear streaks down its eyes. Why would the Entity be crying? Sure, it's built to care, but it's not built to cry, right? I believe that the Entity that we see throughout the entire game is attempting to stop us from connecting our brain to the Mimic because it's Cassie's father. watching on as he's unable to stop his daughter from stumbling upon the very thing he created. A big question surrounding the entity has been, why does it look like a rabbit? Sure, it could just be, oh, it's an animal character that connects with the game, so it fits. A lot of people thought it was just Glitch Trap, but if we're going with the theory that Glitch Trap was actually the Mimic virus scanned into the game, Glitch Trap doesn't actually exist. It was the Mimic all along. And obviously this thing is fighting against the Mimic, so it's not the Mimic virus. There's also a much more horrifying model in the game files, which is interesting because it shows that this character was always meant to be a bunny. They always had a rabbit in mind for this creature. Remember that little detail I told you to remember from earlier? Cassie's father's favorite animatronic was Bonnie, a blue bunny. Another interesting design choice is that the entity looks somewhat human-like. Look at its jaw, it's very humanoid. Many people, myself included, have noticed its similarities to Shadow Bonnie. At certain points it's even labeled as Dark Rabbit or Black Rabbit in the files. Now when do we first hear about Cassie's father? When we pick up the Faz wrench at the start of the game, Cassie mentions that it's like the one that her dad had. A lot of people have pointed out on the back of the official model in the files there's a bunch of numbers. 395248. Those numbers look familiar? Well, if they don't, I don't blame you, because all the way back in FNaF 3, if you type in those numbers into the wall, because yes, that was a thing, you get a minigame, and in this minigame, you play as Golden Freddy on stage with Golden Bonnie. The basic ending is that you just go to the exit door and the minigame is over. There's more to it, but that's unimportant to the current theory. However, in Night 5, if you click a barely visible Shadow Bonnie figurine on the desk, you end up back in the exact same minigame, playing as Shadow Bonnie. Steel will place these numbers on this device for a reason. Could it be a fun Easter egg? Sure, whatever. I just don't think that they did it just for that. The back could have been left blank, but they decided to put numbers there. Obviously, it's well known that said numbers are the hex code of purple backwards, and it's not only heavily attributed to William Afton, but the color purple is also heavily attributed to the Shadow animatronics. Somehow in some way, Cassie's father died and found his way into the security system to keep the Mimic at bay. In fact, I believe he was the very one who built the system to keep the Mimic locked away. The real Gregory mentions earlier that he's with a friend of his. However, a glitch in the walkie-talkie happens just as he uses a pronoun for the character that he's with. We can assume that the character he's with is either Glamrock Freddy, Vanessa, or maybe even both. The thing is, Gregory mentions that he doesn't know much about the Mimic. He doesn't know exactly what it is, meaning that Freddy nor Vanessa do either. If they did, they would obviously share that information, as Gregory calls them his friend. And he would know about who the Mimic is. He does know about the Mex's security system, which is strange considering he doesn't know about why it was built. This led people to believe that he and Vanessa built it, however it doesn't make sense to suggest that. If neither of them know how dangerous the Mimic is or what the Mimic is, why would they feel the need to build a security protocol to keep it locked away? And even bringing up Vanny building the Mex's system doesn't make any sense either. Why would she build something to keep the thing that is mimicking Afton contained? And I don't see Gregory or Freddy building this thing since, well, one's a kid who knows nothing about how dangerous the Mimic is, and the other is a might-be sentient animatronic who, well, doesn't seem helpful unless it comes to carrying you or pushing gray bunnies off the top of a burning building. For someone to have built the Mexa system, they would have to know what needs to be contained and why. Cassie's father is the only person I can see cleanly fitting into that narrative. So, that was a lot. Let's recap. Cassie's father is the cleanest parallel we have to Edwin in the books in my opinion, meaning that he is possibly the one who built the Mimic. In FNaF Security Breach Ruin DLC, we as Cassie are forced to wear a mask to progress to saving our best friend trapped below the Pizzaplex. All throughout the game, a blue glitching genie-like bunny constantly attempts to stop us from wearing the mask. It is trying to save us from what it has created. Cassie's father is somehow inside the entity and is trying to keep his daughter away because he knows what is actually at play here. When you venture below after turning all the security off, you discover that it was never really Gregory calling out to you, but a bot mimicking his voice. After you escape with the directions from the real Gregory, he explains that the security was designed to keep the Mimic locked in, and you had just let it out. He tells you that it's too risky to let you ride the elevator out, so he causes the elevator to fall, attempting to kill you to keep the Mimic trapped down, because they cannot afford to be followed. I am well aware that this video was much longer and much more in-depth than any of my other ones, and I felt that it's a lot better than making 2 or 3 parts, so just having it all in one video to keep it cohesive. The only questions I still can't answer is how Cassie's father would have gotten inside the Mex's security protocol, and why Gregory knows what the security program does, but doesn't know what it exists for. if that makes sense. It's weird. It's weird. I feel that it's not only a clean narrative for me, because I like the idea of getting new characters to play around with lore-wise, and leaving old characters to just be dead, but this series has never really been good at that, has it? I'm very open-minded. I'm open to being wrong. I'm open to being right. I'm very open to being right. But in the end, this is all just for fun. Anyway, that is all for this video. I hope you all enjoyed. And if you did, please be sure to let me know by hitting the like button, subscribing down below if you're new to the channel, and hitting the bell to get notified of my next uploads. And please leave a comment down below letting me know what you think about this theory, if you have anything to add. What are your thoughts about Security Breach Ruin DLC? It's an interesting experience, that's for sure. Be as gentle as possible. I'm still somewhat new to theory crafting. However, I know this community, and I know that criticism often comes in the form of pitchforks and torches. Anyway, thank you all for watching. Be sure to take care of yourselves, and I will see you all in the next video. Bye.